Yeah, this is Billiam Tice. I've been floating through college for a few years longer than I was anticipating. I'm a good student. I'm just very tired and forgetful, and I keep missing the enrollment dates and only taking one class a semester, but I think I finally found the thing that's finally going to get me across that finish line. It's the Fly, PenTop computer by Leapfrog.
When it comes to homework, sometimes kids get stuck. Well, now you can help them get unstuck with a Fly PenTop computer from Leapfrog.
It's sort of like that student planner I used back in middle school. The teachers were certain that was going to be the thing to solve my undiagnosed attention disorder. Why medicate a kid when you can help them get better grades with a student planner or a cool gadget like the Fly PenTop computer? It's not as cool as that Lisa Frank or Happy Bunny daily planner, but you know, the extra $95 it cost might help convince your kid otherwise. The Fly is a sort of smart pen developed by Leapfrog, the same company who created the LeapPad, an interactive reading device which could allow kids to listen and read along with all sorts of picture books. While I already covered Leapfrog as a brand in what is now my 2021 critically acclaimed No Dislikes video, Learning with Leapfrog, I only sort of glossed over the Fly pen, knowing it to be worthy of its own video. As a pen with only an on-off button, the Fly has to have its user interface drawn out to be used, with options being cycled through the pen's speaker. You can have it dictate words, draw out a simple calculator and hear the answer to an equation, and even have it store short notes. With an expandable cartridge slot, additional software and even games could be purchased, and it's pretty neat as far as that stuff goes. Being a toy, I mean, but as far as being a tool, it's not exactly the most functional thing. I do not understand the noises coming out of this pen. While the LeapPad taught you to read, the Fly pen can't read. And while the LeapPad was absolutely described as an educational tool, the Fly was really only described as being marketed as an educational tool and having a quote big gee whiz factor. But with heavy investment from Leapfrog and other partners, it may be easy to dismiss this thing as a big flop, but that's not the whole story. Coming up, I tell you this thing cost $100 million to make, and then you say, huh? Stay tuned. Released toward the end of 2005, the Fly was a big attempt by Leapfrog to evolve their educational technology and products. Advertised as a tool that could help you do better in school, the pen featured a multi-subject software library and was marketed toward tweens, who would have been young children at the height of the LeapPad's popularity. The Fly PenTop computer is just what the commercials implied it to be, a small computer with limited functionality built into a pen with a speaker. It's powered by AAA batteries. On the tip of the pen, and we're talking just the tip, is an interchangeable ink cartridge and camera. Writing has to be captured on special Fly branded paper, which was sold in special forms like notebooks, activity books, and diaries. If you're trying to write on regular paper, it's just a fucking regular pen, I don't know what to tell you. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that there is a USB input on the official rechargeable dock, the original Fly PenTop computer was marketed entirely as an all-in-one machine. Notes are stored on the pen and shared through the speaker, and to navigate all of the pen's different functions, its user interface has to be drawn. The manual oddly has instructions on how to hold the pen, like I hope people would know how to write before using this thing. But once I overcame my stupidity, despite the great obstacle it presented me with, I realized this is because the pen has to be angled correctly in order to view the writing, preferably as top-down as possible. The symbols drawn to navigate the menu system are called flycons, which are usually 1 or 2 capital letters with a circle or box drawn around them. Except most Fly paper actually comes with the menu buttons printed right on the paper, so if you're like me and simply can't write legibly, they got you. We got a Fly notebook. You know what you could do on this? Check this out.
Calculator.
I'm gonna hold the pen like this.
1. When you've written all the numbers, write plus, minus, multiply. Tap the numbers and symbols in your calculator to solve problems.
Big numbers.
Equals 9,999,985.
They were bold enough to brand legible handwriting as Fly type. Everything has to be written in capitals in the same font.
Print up to 3 words in capitals, then listen.
3 words? That's not enough for a note. Ernest Hemingway needed baby shoes for sale, never used. He needed 6 words. I'm not gonna live up to Ernest Hemingway with this limitations, Fly pen. Big, sexy whale.
Note 9. Sexy. Okay. Note save.
Let's try to get it to say fuck again.
Note 9. Bleep. Note
The Fly also came with a little packet that was a preview for what a lot of the activity books for this thing would be. Dinky little activity books that use the Fly in a dinky little way. You load its content through dot patterns stored at the top of the page, sort of like Nintendo e-reader cards, if you remember those or my video.
All right, we're gonna do a personality quiz. Let's see if I am a psychopath.
Try again. Try again. Try again. Try again. Try again. Try again. Try again.
Great.
Got to start to begin.
All right, done.
Okay, let's look at your score. Your score is 11. Look up your score in the key to get your results.
I'm a convertible. I rev it up with the best of them, but you also have a roof ready for a rainy day. Pretty cool. I'm a convertible.
Live on the fly. When you turn on fly, you'll hear live on the fly. Live on the fly.
There it is. Took a second.
But let's try to figure out why they would spend that $100 million. If you track the technological interest of Leapfrog as a company, the Fly PenTop computer sort of actually seems like a natural progression. After all, the Fly is the natural prey of the frog, in cartoons at least. Before Leapfrog was established as a brand, inventor of the Leapfrog, Jim Margraf, co-founded company Explore Technologies, where he created a toy called the Odyssey Globe, which had an interactive touch surface that allowed you to touch the globe in all sorts of places and learn about countries and capitals and states and all factoids, you know. I love geography. Leapfrog must have been just as ecstatic, elated, and excited as I am about geography, because founder of Leapfrog, Michael Wood, decided to buy Explore Technologies and recruit Jim Margraf for a reading device, which ultimately became the LeapPad. Margraf soon realized you could do way more with just paper, and even more if you could get rid of the LeapPad itself, with Margraf saying, "I realized we can make paper the medium. We don't need the LeapPad anymore. Now we can assign voice to those dots. We can write on that page, make a wall map, make a textbook that interacts. We could do anything." A tear. Jim Margraf, somebody has cried portraying you. The LeapPad was the breakout product Leapfrog needed as a toy company to become a toy juggernaut. Picture this. The biggest frog. At the height of the LeapPad's popularity, Leapfrog was sort of the only toy maker creating electronic toys aimed at early childhood education. Despite how innovative the LeapPad was seen and still is seen retrospectively, this is what really led to Leapfrog's crazy high IPO evaluation when they went public in 2002. Your value? Priceless. No matter what you tell yourself. While the LeapPad had steady sales for a while, eventually the company started experimenting with versions of their products aimed at older kids. Quantum LeapPad. After the LeapPad, they created the Leapster, which is sort of an underpowered game console with a touchscreen. It runs off of Flash. The Leapster wasn't necessarily a failure for the company, but it certainly wasn't the breakout hit it needed when newfound investor pressure expected an increase in profits year over year. The delicious thing for the investors was that Leapfrog had an enormous pile of money, and after the success of the LeapPad, they wanted to invest it for more money. By 2004, Michael Wood had left Leapfrog with a fat paycheck because he sold his stake in the company before it took a turn for the questionable.
The LeapPad has gotten old,
said toy industry analyst Sean McGowan. With a lot of pressure to innovate within the industry, Margraf looked towards Swedish company Noto for his next idea. Margraf wanted Leapfrog to license patents Noto had developed for use in their own smart pens, specifically the technology used to communicate between the pen's processor and the paper. First, the pen's camera tip, just the tip, and second, the printed out dot pattern that can be put onto any paper that's very easy to ignore unless, you put your face right up to it. Eventually, the two companies entered into a contract, with Margraf believing Leapfrog's speech technology to be the perfect collab opportunity between the two companies. Leapfrog would put up a lion's share of the reported $100 million budget, but Noto would later license a patented chip created for the Fly Pen for use in their own pen technology. Remember this for later. The previous success of the LeapPad made investors not only want to create the next successful device, but also the next big platform to publish content on. You see, by the year 2000, the LeapPad was the most successful children's product on the market, but by the year 2001, it was outsold by LeapPad books. Leapfrog was selling books to LeapPads at a ratio of 4-to-1. They wanted to repeat that success. With so many classic children's books, it's really easy to see the appeal of buying into the LeapPad platform. It's fucking Dr. Seuss and Richard Scarry and his worm. I fucking love Lowly Worm. It's the same Lowly Worm, just on the LeapPad, and it reads to you. But will Leapfrog could just throw around a bunch of cash to publish classic children's stories right onto the LeapPad? There was no existing software for the Fly PenTop computer to pull from. They had to create all of the content from the ground up, but that doesn't mean they still weren't paying money to license famous IPs. There was just extra development costs involved. While the included activity book that came with the pen is fine, the additional activity books, which could be purchased for $5 to $10, were the next step up. Just fine. A lot of the content on the Fly was just dinky little activities that you could play with the pen.
I don't care about Pirates of the Caribbean trivia. I just don't.
The sound design is the lamest part. I was hoping for more themed audio with the Pirates of the Caribbean books, you know, the yo-ho-ho, but also I guess that's reserved for the more expensive activity books that usually required a cartridge. Here we have the Fly Pen Journal. It really only uses the Fly to give out different kinds of prompts to write about, which is a nice function, I suppose, but this kind of expansion software for the Fly would retail for about $25 to $35. It's just paper with sounds. So far, I can't imagine anything exciting on the Fly. Well, slap my face and give me a kiss. It's Fly Ball. Now I know what you're thinking. That segue, it was out of left field. So this game lets you play out a baseball game with teams built from baseball cards. The Fly uses the player's real baseball stats to determine the strength of each card, while the game is narrated over the speaker like a radio broadcast. As a kid, my dad always tried to bridge the gap between Yu-Gi-Oh! And Sports Center with baseball cards. But I always found them boring because there wasn't like a game attached to them. There needed to be a game element. So if you're my dad in 2006 and you have yet to give up on hope of getting your son into baseball cards, this is for you. Okay, Sudoku, the power of 9. I thought this shit would suck because I haven't tried playing Sudoku since I was in 5th grade and my 5th grade teacher brought in like her mom to show us Sudoku. I really enjoyed it. For a moment. Roll the clip.
God, this Sudoku shit's wild.
I have not had any desire at all to play Sudoku since this. It was just this fleeting love of Sudoku. There are a lot of educational materials on the Fly, which is probably where its strengths lie, but honestly, I would like to allow educational experts to speak on its functionality a bit later in the video. Here, we have a much bigger license, Batman Begins, the battle for Gotham City. It's a strategy game where Batman fights off against Liam Neeson. Get him, B-Man! Batman and the actor Liam Neeson have to traverse over Gotham City to find the parts to a doomsday device so Batman can either prevent Liam Neeson from using it to destroy Gotham City, or the actual actor, Liam Neeson, currently in Gotham City, will destroy it, with the player being responsible. I'm sorry, I just find this shit so remarkably boring. It's one of the most unnecessarily complicated things I've ever tried to explain on this channel. There's a map, different combat styles, 2 game boards, and an endless rule book. There's a lot to this one, and although the work of Christopher Nolan will never compare to the storytelling principles exhibited within Sudoku, the Power of 9, if you're like a kid who's really into Batman, I guess this is pretty neat. This is for you, maybe. That's not me. Thank you for the box anyways, Spin Master. I think it's sort of neat that they have the Marauders map from Harry Potter as a piece of software. I think that's a clever way to translate something familiar. It would have been neat to see them try to port existing board games to the Fly, with the Fly just being used to keep track of turns, roll dice, and the rules, or what other kind of interesting games could have been developed for it. Despite this novel yet frustrating function nowadays, I don't want to undermine how impressive this thing was for the time. game. It was at the top of many must-have toys lists for the 2005 holiday season, and later was awarded a Toy of the Year award, which is a major industry acknowledgement. However, it wasn't really the cash cow Leapfrog was hoping for, with Margraff's personal website later claiming that the toy grossed over $10 million. Which is sort of vague enough and definitely far away enough from the reported $100 million budget to indicate that maybe this thing wasn't potentially a financial success. I don't know, depending on how you see less than $90 million.
The frog was bleeding money.
To Leapfrog, it was a lot, but they were determined to keep hopping forward. They didn't want to focus on the fly pen too much, but you know, they kept expanding their Leapster line with the Leapster L Max. It was bigger.
It does very well for us, so we are expanding it. Its new titles include Cars.
I think it's also interesting to note that within the technological space, creating a smart computer pen was already seen as a big money hole, with the joint investment corporation GoCorp attempting to create a pen in the late 80s and 1990s. They essentially just threw away $75 million. But also they continue to expand the software catalog of the fly pen. Well, their debut on the stock exchange brought in a lot of cash and a lot of excited investors. From October of 2003 to February of 2005, Leapfrog stock had fallen by 77%.
They're a victim of their own success,
said toy industry analyst Sean McGowan. From 1999 to 2003, Leapfrog had captured 80% of the market share, which is why they had such a high evaluation. But as other, much larger corporations began entering the domain of the frog, Leapfrog ended up having to spend a lot more in advertising dollars to compete with competitive products and in legal fees to fight against things like the Fisher-Price's PowerBook, which sorta kinda seems enough like a LeapPad to indicate that maybe, possibly, illegal action should be taken. I don't know, depends on how you see the exact same fucking thing. Well, the LeapPad itself was such an obvious educational tool, the follow-up to the LeapPad, the Leapster, was much more early entertainment than education. Between the changing product line and even scandal, Leapfrog's reputation as an educational brand was slipping away from them. Slippy toad.
I'm okay.
Okay. Side scandal. I know what you're thinking, Billy. It's time you talk about the Prince George's County public school system in Maryland. Picture this. The year is 2003. The CEO of the Prince George's Public County School System in Maryland, the money guy, Andre J. Hornsby, he was sitting around one day. He was like,
Sure would like to spend public funds for my school system's benefit. I'm such a big guy with big responsibilities.
Meanwhile, Leapfrog is doing well selling their products through the Leapfrog Schoolhouse, a division of Leapfrog designed to sell their products directly to educational institutions. Leapfrog would begin having supply chain issues that would be so evident, it's literally a textbook example. But essentially, with all the new capital that would be infused into the company, they were not only spending a lot on development, but way too much on new stock. They overestimated the interest people would have in new versions of the LeapPad. Quantum LeapPad, at one point writing off nearly $40 million in unsold product, which is probably why they were giving out sales commissions to Leapfrog Schoolhouse sales reps. When one Sienna Rochelle Owens became a Leapfrog sales rep in 2004, she remembered somebody she met at a convention, an unspecified convention. Andre J. Hornsby. Little did they know that little frog would change their lives forever. She was like, "Hey Hornsby, remember me from the convention?"
Things are starting to heat up.
"Yeah, I got these LeapPads. I'm sure your county public school system could use a cool $1 million worth of them." Then he was like, okay. I love that little frog. And for no other reason. The sale made national business news headlines. Then, after the sale, for some reason other than the love of the little frog, one Sienna Rochelle Owens decided to deposit her $20K in commission from Leapfrog, withdraw $10K of it, and give it to the CEO of the Prince George's County Public School System, Andre Hornsby. The two then moved in together, or potentially were already living together. Her, a Leapfrog sales rep. Him, financially responsible for a public school system. Horny Hornsby Shame on you. Slap my face and take this public school system's $1 million, he says.
It's too hot! I can't take it anymore!
Now, if we went with Hornsby's version of the story, he might tell you that he just really loves that little fucking frog. That's $1 million frog, he convinced the school board. But when one Sienna Rochelle Owens heard a knock at her door, she was surprised to see a new player enter in the game. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. She ran to testify against Hornsby in court, where he was eventually met with a 16-count federal indictment, including mail fraud, wire fraud, witness and evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. After the scandal, the head of Leapfrog Schoolhouse would resign, leaving a permanent stain on the company's reputation. Now, Leapfrog Schoolhouse Enterprise comprised a significant part of the LeapPad's sales. However, they weren't really able to replicate that success within school systems with The Fly, with Education Week reporting on its release in 2005. A student in a pilot program brought it to class where one of his teachers said, "That's pretty cool. Don't bring it to my class." And besides that teacher, the director of Columbia University says, "I don't think it can fully contribute to the level of problem solving and analysis needed for 21st century skills." Damn, that's an Ivy League response. Additionally, younger kids found it to be very complicated, with Wired sitting in on what was probably one of many focus testing meetings. We hear of Derek, just a child. At the end of the session, Derek was asked whether he figured out what a FlyCon is. Derek sheepishly admits that he has not. After it's explained, Derek says, "Oh," and slaps his forehead, and after the fact, aha moment. He wants to try it again, but he's out of time. The drama in this Wired article from 2005 is just like insane. Margraf was just really on the smart pen hype train. It was sort of the natural progression of his lifelong quest to make everything paper. The LeapPad was just the beginning of his mission to create what he described as the paper internet. Despite the wonderful position Leapfrog was certainly not in at the time, Margraf decided to not go down with the ship and go start a new company, LiveScribe, who would collab with Noto, that no good two-timing Swedish corporation. So now Leapfrog was missing the guy who was trailblazing this whole smart pen thing. However, they wouldn't totally abandon the Fly PenTop computer. In 2007, they released a follow-up, a new design, the Fly Fusion.
What's on my Fly Fusion PenTop computer? My MP3s. Draw it and play it. Here's my algebra homework.
It's a much sleeker model that came in both silver and black and was exclusively sold at Target, which was probably very exciting if you were Target, but if you were Leapfrog, who once had trouble consolidating all of their shelf space at every major retailer, it was probably a little troublesome. Ribbit. $100 million. Marketed more as a media player and as an accessory to use with your PC, this thing has some apparent upgrades. First, a built-in rechargeable battery. I say the battery is an apparent upgrade because I've been having trouble turning any of them on. I'll plug it in and it'll just blink red, which is apparently what's supposed to happen when you're updating it on the computer, but it just wouldn't do anything else. And so I bought a second one new in the box and the same thing happened. And then I purchased a Fly backpack and without even noticing on the listing, this was included at the bottom of it, a third Fly Fusion, and this one worked. So unlike the original Fly PenTop computer, the Fly Fusion's cartridge at the top is actually only memory storage. It has 50 megabytes worth of storage, and you could get an expandable 64 megabytes worth of storage, but none of the games were sold on cartridge or any of the software really. To get it onto the pen, you have to install the CD first onto your PC, then transfer it to the Fly World software, and then you can transfer it to your pen along with little songs and other things from CDs.
Let's get this bad boy plugged in.
You have one test prep application. Tap this button again to scroll.
I create a PenTop profile. All right, my username is going to be Billiam Thick. My password's going to, I'm not telling you.
And unlike the original Fly, this was able to store and record an image of your notes basically one-to-one.
Good handwriting. Dumb.
Let's draw a little Sonic the Hedgehog down here just to, you know, round out what my school notes used to look like. This is the test page I created. If you notice all those little scribble marks, that's because my pen's ink was kind of low, so I had to keep doing this to try to pull it out. And so the digital transcription actually picked that up when it's not visible on the paper. So it's good. It's a little too good, if you ask me. Slow it down, Leapfrog. So the image capture is good, but what's not good is the handwriting transcription. That's not correct. I like how it picked up good handwriting, dumb. Oh shit. Merriam-Webster. So instead of cartridges, all the software came on CDs, and you have to put it on the computer and then onto the pen. So we're gonna try that out. So I keep my CD drive down here. I don't do like cable management in terms of like trying to hide the cables. There's some music in here. Should I open it up with VLC? I guess this was composed. Nemo! Transfer FlyFusion Music Studio Pro from the FlyWorld application onto your PenTop. Oh, my applications are being updated. What was my password? Oh, it's because the caps lock's on. Free with your FlyFusion software CD purchase, 75 minutes of tutor.com. All right, tutor.com's still around. Oh, we got a lot of applications for actions, operations, perimeter, statistics. We're gonna throw that over there. And we have 23 megabytes left. That's enough for a few jams. So let's figure this out. Add MP3. Music, iTunes, iTunes Media, music, compilations, Digivine. Got there to the side, I said I'm angry. Although the FlyFusion significantly increased the functionality of the Fly PenTop computer, Leapfrog kind of abandoned the idea of making smart pens after that. However, they did later recycle the camera and dot technology for the follow-up to the LeapPad, the Leapreader. The Leapreader basically has all the functionality of the LeapPad minus the big hunk of plastic. And both LiveScribe and Anoto are still creating smart pens. If you go to their website today, you can buy all sorts of different models, and I was surprised to see companies like Moleskine actually create smart pens. There's a market for this stuff. Most modern pens support audio recording, and they can even sync up with your tablet or, you know, note-taking apps like Evernote, but I use Notability. These things are still around serving a particular niche, and it is significantly cheaper than an iPad with an Apple Pencil, so I understand the appeal of it. But I was personally disappointed despite all the technical improvements that you still need to use the brand-specific special paper for all of these pens. It's like, what is the incentive to ever improve the technology when the people are not looking just to create the next big device, but the next platform to publish content on? In 2016, Leapfrog was fully acquired by VTech, an acquisition which reportedly cost $72 million, $28 million less than the $100 million Fly PenTop computer budget. It's sort of fitting that a product called the Fly essentially made Leapfrog eat itself alive. Fly FX. I don't... One more time? It's off the hook. It's a phone off the hook. Okay, is this like a smooch sound effect? Yep. Imagine you're doing like one of those little math sheets and you're trying to like get through it before all your classmates and you finish it and you end it with every time.